So my name is Kate Monaghan. I'm the job coordinator for the southwest of WA under a program called Workforce Australia Local Jobs. So very long title. I'm contracted to the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations federally to look after the labour market for the region. I think that one thing that's very important when talking about the labour market is really, why are we working? Is it for that paycheck? Quite likely. So that's where this particular session comes in, and we're very lucky to have Lacey with us today. Before we do get started, I do want to read our acknowledgement of country because we are on some very, very beautiful Noongar land here today. The southwest is part of traditional lands of the Noongar Nation. This is a beautiful section of the country where bush meets ocean. We would like to acknowledge the many individuals who assist us in driving change. We extend respect and acknowledgement to all elders past, present, and the emerging leaders, and take the opportunity to appreciate the efforts to date in creating a culturally significant and more inclusive shift in the way we live, work, and play in the southwest of WA. Thank you. Here is Lacey from Money School.
A couple of things just to add. Thank you for that beautiful acknowledgement of country. I grew up on Turrbal lands in Yanshan, which is in Brisbane, and I moved west 22 years ago, like more than half my life, and fell in love with Noongar Butcher, and I feel very fortunate to be here. I used to live on Wardandi lands in Australand until about September last year, so I really appreciate the estuary particularly and how calm it is. How consistent it is. I love the beaches as well, but I love how you can walk along the estuary and it's pretty much the same every day. It's very soothing. We're going to talk a little bit about cultural expectations, but while we're thinking about our First Nations people, I just want to point out First Nations people live in a culture that is about sharing. They prioritise sharing above, often, personal well-being in some cases. And can you imagine how hard it would be to be in a culture that prioritises sharing and then find yourself in a capitalist society that we live in that prioritises individual well-being, often at the expense of others. So our First Nations people aren't just incredible for the custodianship that they have had of this land, and they're the reason why we get to appreciate this natural beauty. They're incredible because they have to really walk in two lands when it comes particularly to money. And that's just one example. We're going to talk a bit more about culture later. Normally I would do a disclaimer about this is only financial education and not advice, but we're not going to go anywhere near anything that could even be interpreted as advice today. We're going to do some different kind of stuff. We're going to talk about context. What is the context you operate in? What is your environment? What is your situation that you find yourself in? What is your forest or your ocean that you're sitting in at the moment? Versus the choices you make, because we've got to think about both things. And the answer to personal finance isn't just fixing one. You've got to look at both. The second thing we're going to do is look at some tips to help you make the most of your money. Now, these are very high-level tips. I'm not going to get into major specifics today because you've got the chance to get your specific questions answered at the end. But as to the content we're going to talk about, I'm going to run you through context and then where does personal responsibility start, like these choices you make. And I'm going to give you the patented, well not actually patented, chair theory of money. And this is something that I find really useful for understanding how you operate in our personal finance context, and then the tips and the chats that we've mentioned already. So why does context matter? And I'll tell you why I think it matters. You might have different opinions. There's nothing worse than someone coming in and saying, you must save 20% of everything you've got, and walking away. Because for some people, 20% is going to be absolutely impossible. It's going to be beyond even, 1% might be impossible right now. Okay? For other people, 20% is going to be a walk in the park. Where you are in your life, what your circumstances are, what your priorities are, what resources you have, is really important to take into account when you're learning about money. Because there are going to be times when you can't do some things, or they're not the right thing for you to do. Personal finance is not one size fits all. You have to understand where you're coming from to be able to make decisions that fit for you. And yes, you can definitely talk to people like financial counsellors to get advice, but please don't go listening to a podcast or reading a book and going, oh, they said I should do it, so I must do it. It's not the case. You have to think about your situation, and only you know that really well. Like, I don't know it. I can guess. I've talked to a couple of you today, so I found a little bit more about you, but even with that, I wouldn't know what's the most important thing for you. It is personal finance. It is choose your own adventure. It's personal. You have to understand where your context is coming from. So I want to run you through a few things to consider in that. So first of all, how much support payments are versus the poverty line. We're going to run through some data. We're going to talk about culture and family and that context, which I alluded to before. And we're going to have a think about the impact on your well-being and capacity. So first of all, if you were getting your dollars per week from job seeker, youth allowance or the age pension, some of those are subject to tax. This is for a single person with no dependents after tax, but not getting any rent assistance, okay? So I know there's a lot of variations on this, but I picked two extremes. So that's what you take home per week in your pocket. The poverty line, according to the Australian Council of Social Services in 2020, so keep in mind that that's 5 years ago, said that $480 a week is Australia's poverty line. My thoughts exactly. Now, I'm sorry that I have made this hard for you to read. I didn't realise it was going to be so bright in here and I should have changed my colours. That line there, the red one you can see going across the top, is from March 2024, so 4 years later, by a different group called the Melbourne Institute. And they say the poverty line is $584 a week. Do we see a big gap? Huge gap. So you can imagine how hypocritical it would be if I turned up and said, you need to save money on this situation. You'd laugh at me. I think you'd laugh at me. Would you laugh at me? Yeah, most of us would. And I think you've got to acknowledge that this is the real situation you live in. If we take another example, which is if you add the rent assistance in, if you've got the maximum rent assistance that you could access, then at $480 a week, you just scrape in on job seeker. You've got a gap still on youth allowance, and you're doing okay on the age pension. But can I tell you that the poverty line, I don't need to tell you this actually, you know this, it's not much fun. You don't have any extra left over for the enjoyable stuff, do you? You're too worried about putting a roof over your head, food in your bellies, and being able to move around with clothing on, ideally. That would be wonderful. There's just not much left over for anything that feels joyous with money. It's a stressful experience for most people. Is anyone here violently disagreeing with me? If you're violently disagreeing, please put your hand up. Okay, so I'm guessing that I'm not telling you anything new. What I'm trying to do is acknowledge that this is a real situation for people who are living on benefits. This is how life is. And when we turn around to people who are living on benefits, if you are here, and say to them, well, that's your fault, you made bad choices, it's really unfair. It's not a realistic expectation. And if anyone says that to you, I'd like you to send them my way, please, so I can have a chat with them. I would really appreciate it. But that's why I wanted to put this up front. I want, for those of you who are in this situation, to acknowledge that that's okay, that you're in here. The expectations around saving and personal responsibility are very hard to apply when you are just making ends meet and often going backwards. And that's okay. Now, that's the dollars. How might culture impact? Now, I gave you an example before. If you are a First Nations Australian and you recognise that culture and you're connected to your family and your groups, then there is an expectation that you will share. Sometimes it gets taken too far and we hear the phrase humbugging used sometimes when potentially it's becoming destructive. But it is a real expectation that someone in First Nations families will give, and that's just a done thing. And if you didn't do it, you would risk being ridiculed, shunned, exactly. Those sorts of things happen to people who try to do what our capitalist society suggests, which is you need to save for you. All right, so we have to recognise that. I can think of a few other cultural ones, and I'll tell you mine. If anyone's got another one they want to share after I've done this, you can tell me. So another one that might be common is migrants. Lots of migrants come to Australia and maintain connections with their family in their origin country. And the expectation is they're sending money home to them. Because in Australia, we often make a lot more money than the place that they might have come from. So $50 from us could be a week's salary in their origin country. So you'll meet many migrants who are living on the bones of their butt, eating baked beans every day, just so they can send as much money home as they can. Then you might have cultural expectations around caring. You know, you're the woman, you had the baby, you better stay home. Don't you dare put that child in childcare. How could you? That's awful, you terrible mother, you. How dare you think about your earning potential? Or how much might be earned as a couple, or your superannuation. Those kinds of expectations can be there. Does anyone else have a cultural expectation that they've confronted that they'd like to share? You don't have to. I'm just giving you the opportunities. No? Those matter. And everybody's got a different set of cultural expectations on them. I don't know what yours are, but they'll be affecting your decisions. They'll be affecting the context in which you operate, and you've got to take them into account. And then, our marvellous brains. They're fantastic, aren't they? They evolved over a very long time. They do two really, really unhelpful things for us with money. Like, so much so that I'm like, this is a design flaw. I wish I could engineer it out. Anyway, the first thing they do is they see money and they convert it to feel-good chemicals in your brain. Ever had that moment? You see money in your account and your brain is literally going, spend me, make me feel good. You know, it's the same as sex and drugs and all the fun stuff that people get addicted to. It's this idea of your brain literally seeing that money and going, make me feel good. Okay? It is doing that to you. So if you've ever bought a little treat for yourself when you know you couldn't afford it, but you've done it anyway, that's why. It's often your brain sending you these signals. It's literally seeing the money in your bank account and going like, oh my God, I would feel so good if you just bought that thing. It would be amazing. It's very much like hunger and cravings. I've just learned about this. My family and I are doing this better health course because I do not eat well. And they were telling us last night about the difference between hunger. When you're hungry, anything will do. You'll eat an apple. That's what I tell my kids. If you're not hungry, you'd eat the apple if you were genuinely hungry. It's a craving when you must have that one thing. That's what your brain does with money. It sees that and it goes, I crave this thing. You've kind of got to get to the bottom of why you crave that thing. And I'll tell you, it's very rarely about money. It's mostly about some emotional hole that you're trying to fill. The same as me with my chocolate when I've had a bad day at work, right? This is exactly what happens. Our bodies and our brains are like, oh, you're a bit miserable. I can cheer you up. Go buy that thing. And then before you know it, you get home and you're like, oh, I don't have enough for rent now. Or, oh, damn, we're not going to be able to afford that meat. Because your really annoying brain is working against you, okay? So we have to acknowledge that that's happening, first of all. Your brain does something else which is even worse, more insidious, and you thought that was bad, right? We all don't cut your brain out, you have to have the brain, but I haven't found a way to upgrade. This next one is the one that absolutely kills me because people blame themselves. When you are in financial stress, it chews up what they're technically called your cognitive capacity. That's your brain space. You need that brain space to operate, to make good decisions. And when you're financially stressed, I'm pretty sure you'll relate to this. Everyone has had at least one period like this in their lives. Maybe you're in this right now. Money is short. And the back of your brain is, can I afford the rent? What am I going to do if the landlord puts the rate up? I don't think I can afford these groceries. How am I going to feed my kids tonight? Do I have to sell this car, this piece of furniture to cover my bills? That script is running in the back of your head. And while it's doing that, it's chewing up your brain space. And the impact is basically the same as if you lost 13 IQ points. Now, just to give you a scope, an average person is about 100 IQ points. So 13 IQ points is a heck of a handicap. I don't know about you, but I can't spare any IQ points. I need them all, okay? So what happens is you're in this financially stressed state and you're expected to make these great decisions, but you don't have the brain space to make the great decisions. So then we turn around and blame you for making a bad decision instead of recognising that it's not reasonable. Often at this point people go, oh my gosh, I'm thinking back to when I made this decision and I knew it was stupid in retrospect. I can't believe I did that. This is why. You don't have your full cognitive capacity available to you when you are under financial stress. Does that surprise anybody? No. There's a lot of you going like, oh yeah, this is me. I totally get this. That happens a lot to people when I present this. So if you're ever interested in that research, you can look it up. If you Google Princeton University poverty brain, which sounds horrible, but that's the phrase they've come up for it. The important thing is that you acknowledge that's happening. And I, of course, whenever someone's in that situation, I would encourage you to outsource some of your decision making, or at least the thinking process, by talking to a financial counsellor. Someone who is not in financial stress and who can probably give you some suggestions that you might miss. But this could be your context. You've got to acknowledge that that's happening. Now, you're all looking very depressed right now. I'm very sorry to give you all the bad news up front. But I think once you know that this is happening, you can plan around it. You can do things to try and stop it from affecting you so much. And there is a point, of course, at which personal responsibility kicks in. Everyone's got their own unique context affecting their money, but within our context, can you still make the best choice available to you at any one time? Your choices might be more limited than you would like. But acknowledging that all that stuff sucks, yes, it's tough, yes, it's hard, you still have to, at some point, make the most of what you've got. So where does that kick in? Now, it's very interesting as well. Your brain does do one very useful thing for you if you harness it. So I know I've bagged our brains out, but we should definitely keep them because they will do this one really good thing. Pardon?
So they keep your freaking life too.
Yeah, they do that. I probably am being a bit hard on the brain, aren't I?
Next thing goes heart, and you get that one.
Absolutely. We should definitely keep our brains. Just be aware of these two shortcomings. Here's one thing that brains are really good at. Pattern recognition. You ever decided you wanted to buy like a pair of shoes or a car or something, and all of a sudden, like, I want that one, everybody's got one. Okay, I want a red car. Oh my gosh, there's a million red cars on the road. This must be new. I never noticed how many red cars there were before. Or I didn't realise everybody was wearing these incredible, were they Hoka sneakers? Something like that. That is your brain looking for things for you because you told it to. You said to it, I want that, and so it started looking for it everywhere, subconsciously without you having to do anything extra. It's very similar to what happens with money. If you tell it to look for something, it will do it for you. So if you look for everything that's bad all the time, it will only find everything that's bad. That's your brain doing what you told it to. You have to actually decide to tell it to look for something good, which can be a really hard ask when you've got that context. There will be days when you can't do it. But that's the time your brain can be really helpful. It can help you look for what you need. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. So I want to do an activity now. Would you mind getting the lights turned up again for this one so no one stacks it? Thank you. Now, before you stand up, and I am going to ask you to stand up, if anyone doesn't want to participate, that's fine. You can stay seated. What I've got up here are two blue posters. Again, it's hard to read this. You'll have to take my word for it. It matches the blue up there. My money situation is due to my choices 100% down here. And at the back of the room, all the way down here, is the other end of the scale. My money choices are due 100% to my context. Now, both of these things are true. There is no right or wrong answer. There's only what's true for you. Right now, your money situation, where do you feel you are sitting between those two? If you feel like it's all because I made silly decisions that I'm having trouble, you'd be over this end. If you're like, look, I think it could be a bit of both. Maybe you're about halfway. I guess this would be about halfway. I think it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B. Or it is entirely due to forces beyond my control. There's nothing I can do about it. Again, there's no right or right answer because each of you have got different personal situations right now. And for some of you, it will feel like you're at one end or the other, or maybe you're in the middle. All right, so we've got people along the whole length here. All right? We've got people who feel it's more strongly about what they chose to do and people who feel more strongly about I can't make a good choice right now. My environment won't let me. Is that a fair summary? I get you to do this, not so I can say there's a right or wrong and you all need to move one way or the other. I do this to get you thinking about what's going to work best for you to feel empowered. Now, if we're down this end, it's all about environment. It's all about, oh my gosh, I want to make a good choice, but I just can't do it. Everything's working against me. At this end of the room, one of your most important things is how you vote. You need to vote for people who are going to change your environment. You need to write to your local politicians and members. You need to advocate. You need to do all that stuff. That's the only thing that's really going to change your environment meaningfully as a generic and broad statement. You've got to be doing that kind of stuff to feel like you can make a change. Now, depending on what environment it is, there might be other things you could change, and that's where I'd like you to talk to a financial counsellor who might have another suggestion for what environmental factors you can do. But it is ridiculous for me to tell you to do something different if your environment's working against you, okay? So you can take what I'm talking about with the personal responsibility stuff with a grain of salt, okay? It might not apply to you, and that is totally fine, okay? But the best thing you can do is advocate for systemic change. By that I mean raise the rate. Even you're more on the personal choices. You're more thinking about, gee, this is the decisions I made, all right? Then you are the people that are most likely to relate to, I need to look at the things that I'm looking for. I need to set goals. I need to make the best choices I can. I need to talk to people to get advice, okay? If you're in the middle, you can do a bit of both. But what I wanted you to do is think about where you sit, because that's going to colour what you do and what things you're going to take away from today and what the most sensible things are to fit for you. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. I'm not taking a photo or anything. It's just your choice. But knowing that about yourself, I hope will help you think a little bit more about what you think is going to work for you, okay? And put it through that lens of belief. No right or wrong. So now I want to give you my not patented at all chair theory of personal finance, which I find as a helpful framework. And no matter which place you saw yourself on the spectrum, this can help you identify where things are weak points for you and what you might need to work on. So your money situation is the outcome of four things, generally, the combination, and different bits are more important at different times. So if you said it's all about this one thing right now, then that's fine. It is about that thing right now. But over the course of your life, there are four things that are going to affect your personal finance. The first one is your personal preferences. So I've called it preferences rather than choices, because often it's the things that you like to spend money on, the ways you find joy. Do you prioritise needs over wants, or are you one of those people who's more susceptible for going for wants first? Those things that are unique to you. They're your decisions, and how do you think about them? The second thing is how much you know about money. There's a lot of people who get into trouble with money because they didn't know how something worked. I mean, has anyone had a debt problem because they were like, I had no idea that this was the interest rate and the repayment plans? Yes, you are not alone, ma'am. I have done it too. Lots of us do that sort of stuff. And it's not because you're silly. It's not because there's something wrong with you. You just didn't know. You didn't get taught it. Now, anyone who was at school after 2011, I just want to just confirm this for you, you learned about money in school. It's been in the curriculum since 2011 in 35 different curriculum elements from years 1 to years 10 in the compulsory strains of maths and HASS. I guarantee you, if you went to school after 2011, you learned 90% of what I would teach an adult about money. If you were not in school from 2011 on, chances are you did not learn this stuff at school. You probably only learnt it from your friends and family, often around the dinner table or at a barbecue. And you heard, Uncle Joe go, oh, don't invest in the share market, it's a roller coaster, it's gambling. Or, oh, you have to own your own property, must have a roof on your head, more important than anything else, buy a house. You would have heard things like that most likely. Has anyone heard those things before from their well-meaning family and friends? Great. No one size fits all, everybody. Every single piece of that advice you have to put through a filter of, does this work for me? Okay? But that's where we did a lot of our learning if we didn't go out and seek it, right? So that's the first two bits. Then there's the opportunities you had. This is the ovarian lottery. Where were you born? Who were you born to? What was your family situation? Did your parents get divorced? Did you have to move around a lot? Did you have parents who were university educated or were they tradespeople? A lot of these things have a bearing on your financial outcome. And if we pretend they don't, we're just ignoring something very obvious. The ovarian lottery matters. It matters in Australia as much as it does in the rest of the world. And if you're ever feeling bad about the ovarian lottery here, just imagine if you won the ovarian lottery and lived in Afghanistan and you're a woman. I feel like I've won the lottery every time I think about that alternative. Being born in Australia can be a good thing, but within Australia we still have a huge amount of inequity, huge amount. And some of that is going to be where you started in life and what opportunities were given to you. I'll talk a little bit about that later when I tell you my mum's story. And then, luck, plain old dumb luck, has a bearing on your financial outcomes. Sometimes you will be lucky and sometimes you will be unlucky. And you can't do a whole lot about that, except for plan in advance if it's something that could be detrimental. But when you put those together, you get your financial chair, like 4 legs of a chair. Okay? So you've got the blue items, personal preference and financial knowledge. They're the things that are about you. Then you've got the luck and opportunities that are things that are usually beyond your control to some extent. So when you're thinking about this, your chair's going to be different from everyone else's chair. No one's got the same chair. Some people are missing 2 or 3 legs of that chair. They don't even have a chair, they're on the ground. Some people have got lovely sturdy chairs with lovely strong legs. Everyone's chair is different. There's no right or wrong. It's just what you can do about it. So the 2 things you can control to a certain extent are the decisions you make based on what you like to do with your money and how much you know about money. So that you can do something about. Now, when you're under financial stress, I really dislike telling people to go and learn about money. You need to get out of, it's like you don't throw a drowning person a manual on swimming, do you? You don't go read a book on swimming. You save the person first. So you might not be in the headspace to have room to learn about money, in which case, good on you for being here, because this must have potentially felt like a really tough call. But when you do have space, building up your financial knowledge and your understanding of how money works is going to be beneficial to you. Then there's the stuff that you might have some control or some influence over, but some of it you won't. It's just going to happen to you. Things like redundancies at workplaces and losing your job, things like accidents, things like family circumstances. You know, you get a father or a mother who's unwell and you have to look after them. Some of this stuff is just luck. And there's not much you can do except for try and manage your risk in advance. And if you're too busy making ends meet, then you might not have the headspace to do that. That's the chair theory. The summary of all of this is you have to do the best you can with what you have. Acknowledging where you are and where your situation is and what's going to fit for you. I'd like you all to stop blaming yourself for what's beyond your control and influence. Blaming yourself for this stuff is not helpful. And maybe there is always a component of luck and then some of it's personal responsibility. You didn't do the best you could do in that circumstance, and that's okay. If you learn from it and change your behaviour next time, then that's the best you can hope for. But remember that things will change with time, including you. So wherever you are right now might suck. You might be very unhappy with it, but it will change over time. And you will change over time because you will learn more and your priorities will change. And if you can acknowledge that, then you'll be able to make the most of your money. So remember I told you about what our brains do from a pattern recognition point of view. Right? One of the best things you can do for that is tell it what you want it to look for. And do that consciously. And have it somewhere where your brain can see it if you're new to doing this. And that looks like writing down money goals. Now, what is a good goal? I would not recommend a post-it note stuck to your bathroom mirror that says, achieve financial independence. It's very generic. Very hard to implement. Your brain doesn't know what to look for. You have to tell it what to look for. Okay? So I've done a few examples up here. It might be, I think I'm spending too much money on food, so I'm going to cook and freeze some lunches. Something small, it's fine. It might be, the skin on the job thing is the most important thing for me right now, so I'm going to focus on updating my resume and my cover letter because I feel like that's the best thing that's going to help me earn some money. And certainly several of you in here felt like There's no point trying to do better with money until you get a job from the survey that we had at the beginning. So that might be the one for you. That's the best place to put your energy in. It might be, I'm really struggling, I've got my power bill coming. My power bill's arrived. Oh my gosh, when did the price go up so high? When did this happen? I can't make that payment. You might need to call your power provider and ask for hardship help, or talk to a financial counsellor who can help you do that as well. That might be the sticky note for this week. Or it could be, I've just managed to cover everything, I've got a little bit extra, do I buy that treat? Maybe I'll put $10 aside just in case there's a problem next week. Now you can try and start a little bit of saving. It's going to be out of reach for a lot of people here, but if you can do it and you want to start putting some money aside, having some money in cash just means that when something goes wrong, you don't have to go into debt. That's the point of it. You don't have to borrow. You don't have to use buy now, pay later, or a credit card, or a personal loan, or whatever. That's the point of having some savings set aside. Or it might be, gee, I've had this phone plan for 5 years. It seemed like a good deal back then, but there's a heap better providers now. Maybe I'll go and find a better provider and I'll switch my phone plan. They're just 5 examples that I randomly picked when I was thinking about what have I had people ask me questions about in these kinds of sessions. It might be different for you, but write it down. If you can, put it on a sticky note. I've got some sticky notes over here if anyone wants to do this today. You're welcome to grab one. And try and put it somewhere where your brain will see it regularly. It will start looking for this stuff for you. Suddenly you'll start seeing those ads on your Facebook that say, here's some great recipes that freeze really well. And you'll be like, what a coincidence, Facebook was listening to me. No, you just started looking because you told your brain to look for it. I know, I agree there's probably, they probably do listen to us to some extent, but regardless, it would be lovely if they listened to me and gave me free. Did you hear that, Facebook? My phones are on airplane mode, they won't hear that. I'll only hear when I turn it back on later that I'll be proven wrong probably. But get your brain looking for it. Start your brain focusing on that thing. Pick one small thing. Don't make it a massive, I must get out of debt tomorrow, or I must pay off this loan in 5 seconds flat. Make it something small and achievable. Start training your brain. And once you've got that win, chalk that up as a win, next one. Okay? So writing down those small achievable goals can be really good. Now, if you're like, Lacey, I don't know where to start. Honestly, it's a big fire. I have no idea. That is when you need to talk to a financial counsellor and get them to help you prioritise. Okay? Because sometimes we're too deep in that. We're too deep in this, I don't know what to do. And some questions from someone who's outside looking in can be enough to help trigger, oh, I should do this, or help you work out where to start. If it's too overwhelming, please talk to somebody. Okay? So that's the first tip. Now, the second tip is one that I think can be helpful for some people. Thinking about what can change for you long term. So I want to tell you a bit of a story now. And I'm going to tell you a story about my mum, Fran. Now, people like to hear my story sometimes. I just tell people I am the poster child for what happens when you start teaching a child about money and then they go get a really high-paying job and then they save all that money and they invest it, okay? I'm actually quite boring. I'm the logical outcome of what happens when you do this. My mother, who was also my co-founder for Money School, did not have that kind of experience at all. My chair looked like this, okay? It's great. Thanks, Mum and Dad. They did a great job. I had my share of challenges. We were poor. We didn't have extra money because my parents divorced. My dad didn't pay child support. And my mum was raising 2 children by herself on $17,000 a year. So don't think that I had luxury, but I certainly had stability. I had lots of opportunities. I got a scholarship to a really nice high school. I did a university degree in engineering. I went and worked in mining and made a lot of money. I've had a great, easy time of it. Plenty of things have gone wrong, but compared to most people, it's been great. That's my mum's chair. My mum did not have an easy life. Nothing went right for my mum until she hit about 40. Okay, so just if anyone's like it's too late for me, it is not too late for you. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about it just so that you believe me, because I can say this and you go, oh, are you sure? Okay, so that's my gorgeous mother. That's not my dad. She's about 16 there. And about 4 years after this photo, she fell pregnant out of wedlock. She left school when she was young, and she had got a scholarship to university somehow, but after a year dropped out, and just started working in admin jobs, ad hoc. Met this bloke, not that guy, I haven't got a photo of the other guy, on the Gold Coast. and followed him to Perth. So she'd grown up in like Sydney and Victoria and moved over to Perth and followed this guy and got pregnant out of wedlock, as you do when you're 20 and, you know, resisting any input from your parents at all. My grandparents, by the way, were quite traditional, shall we say. So they knew none of this. They knew nothing about her following this bloke, Michael, over. They knew nothing about her getting pregnant. And thank goodness she turned 21 before the baby came, because that meant she didn't have to tell her parents. She put the baby up for adoption. So my eldest half-sister grew up in Perth. I met her when I was 15. They got connected through Jigsaw, so that was lovely. But she moved back to the East Coast and never told anybody. Like, she made that decision because in 1971, when my sister was born, there wasn't a lot of support. She was living away from her home. She knew if she went back to her parents, they'd kick her out anyway, because they would have been like, "You disgusting person, how dare you get pregnant out of wedlock?" The reason why this happened is because when she was 5 months pregnant, he announced he already had a wife and kids and left. Was it on the brochure, that one? Yeah. He's unfortunately passed away, so I can't go and give him a big kick, but that's what happened. Anyway. So, through that's a luck thing, right? Like, you don't see that in the brochure. I wouldn't have interviewed for that when I was first considering a father for my children. Like, do you already have a wife and children? So she found herself in this circumstance that really sucked, and she just acknowledged she couldn't support a baby without having family around her, because she would have had to work and the child would have had to be in full-time care. She didn't want to do that, and she thought it was better for the child to be adopted. The child was adopted into a lovely family of 2 university professors. She had a wonderful life. It's worked out for the best. But at that time, she carried a lot of guilt about that, you can imagine, like the guilt you would feel. Anyway, but she did, despite not telling anybody, meet my dad. And I put photos in there that you can't really see. Do you mind turning the lights off again, just so that everyone can see the handlebar mustache? I just really feel you have to appreciate the time period. But she did meet my dad when she was in her late 20s, and she'd already had one other marriage and been divorced by this point, by the way, and that had gone very badly because he had cheated on her and then robbed her of all of her belongings. And so then she met my father. It's like, how 70s is that? And then my grandparents, and they got married and had us, and aren't we adorable? I'm 4 there, that's me, and my little sister Megan, who was 2 at that time, and like, how is that for 80s? The perm, glorious perm. Well done, Mum. But during this time, it turned out that my mum, who was a saver, had married a spender. Love my dad. He lives over here now. I see him every week. He's shocking with money. I learned what to do from my mum and what not to do from my dad. And my dad was the breadwinner for quite a while, and had his own building business and very good at it. But like, this is the man who he got a back injury and he was at home, and my mum had to work and she couldn't earn a lot of money because she only had admin jobs. And there's this motherhood penalty that applies to parents where they pay you less because they think you're going to run out and have to go every sick day. She's making money. He's at home on the couch, but he drags himself off the couch to go to what was Bunnings, like it's now, it was Mitre 10 back then, and buy his 5th nail gun, and therefore deplete all the money we had for groceries. So this is the sort of stuff that was happening when I was like early primary school. We would be like, we don't have enough money for dinner because Dad bought a nail gun. And my dad, of course, was buying a nail gun because he thought he was going to go back to work, and he was filling this void of I'm not the breadwinner anymore identity crisis, right? That's what I suspect was happening for him. But he did that with no regard for us. So when I was 8, my parents divorced. And so my mum found herself alone, raising 2 girls, with my dad who, you know, I mentioned he ran his own business. Something very dodgy about Australians and their dislike of tax. Everything went through that big business. The roses he bought for his girlfriends, the weekends away, everything went through it. So there was no money for child support. So my dad was wearing lovely clothes, driving a brand new Land Cruiser, taking his girlfriends out on dates, whereas our family was very excited if we could afford a week away on the Gold Coast, an hour away in the caravan park. That was like a big deal for us. So that was her experience. During this, she was like, I have to be able to earn my own income. This is insane. I can't keep going. So she started going to night school as an accountant. And she had been working as a bookkeeper, which is like a non-qualified version of getting into the accounting industry. You just learn how to run the books. I'm sure there's training for it as well, but back then there certainly, she just got in with this awesome dude who let her work school hours. And she's working with these clients and then learning about how their investing worked and learning how tax worked, and was like, wow, this is amazing. And so she would come home and talk to me and my sister about this. And something happens when you're the eldest child in a single parent family, suddenly you become the confidant. So at about 10, I was getting involved in the decisions, which has turned out to be very useful, but I realise that might not be typical for everyone else. But this is my point about winning the ovarian lottery. I got this mother who just was curious about it and learned about it. So she went through night school, and I remember my stepdad doing night school at the same too, trying to do some engineering because he'd been in the mines and he wanted to upskill. It was a real thing in our family, this, like, I want to try and get a more high-paying job, like, bluntly, and more stability. And so they were both studying while my sister and I were growing up. And that went pretty well. And then we got to, she turned 50 in this photo. Another excellent pen, short one this time. And I'm 17 and my sister's 15 in this photo. But for that period between when my parents divorced and this photo, there was no spare money. There just wasn't, right? Like, we could afford the one pair of shoes at the beginning of the year for school. You can have one pair of sneakers, but it better be from Kmart. It was just, life was like that. I never knew we didn't have money because I felt safe and I felt loved. There was no point. It's only looking back, and only when I'd go to my friends' houses and be like, oh, you went skiing in France. Wow. Oh, you're getting a Porsche for your 16. Right? This is what happens when you go to a private girls' high school and you don't have money. You're like, please don't look at the hemming on my skirt that I had to get. This is 10 years old. I had to get hand-me-downs. But during that time, my mum was learning about money and she started teaching me about money. So she started talking to me when I was 10 about compound interest. And do you know how she explained it to me? Like rabbits breeding. She was like, you've seen rabbits and bunnies, that, you've done some exponential maths, right? Yeah, sure, no worries, Mum. But it did stick. It did stick for me. And then, as I was in my teens, she was reading all these books. And I don't recommend this book, but it did work at the time. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The man's he's a nutcase. Don't read it. But that was enough for us to start thinking about how you invest. So she started taking me to these courses, there'd be a speaker at the local pub, and that was where I learned the phrase quality undervalued assets when I was 17, and that has shaped my life. You never know where you're going to find these things. But this is actually a year after she bought her first investment, $500 worth of shares. Up until then, she'd had no money. She had to feed us, she had to house us, there was nothing left over. But finally, we were getting jobs, we were becoming more independent. I moved out of home 2 years after this, and she could finally start saving. And when she started saving, she was like, I have been waiting for this moment. I have been learning, I have been understanding it all. And she hit the ground running. She might have started with $500 worth of shares, but she started shoving stuff into super. She started buying more investments. She did get a bit crazy, okay? I will tell you a little bit about that. But she was like, I'm going to be ready because the day is going to come when I have more money and then I'm going to do something about it. And that is what happened with my mother. I out-earned her in my third year out of uni as a chemical engineer. I remember going oh, look, I just got a pay rise. And my mum going I've never earned that much in my life. But she, parents, she was excited for me. She's like, this is awesome. We've done the right thing. We've encouraged you into this, blood-sucking industry and you should keep going. But but she never made heaps of money. She just never did. Her peak earning when she was 63 was $100,000 a year when she was financial controller of a company, which took her 25 years to get to that promotion point, right? It's a long journey. That's what I mean about I've had the nice, easy chair by comparison. But she did really invest heavily, and she did use super, but it meant that when she got sick in 2017, she got cancer for the first time, lymphoma, she had already been able to retire by that point as a self-funded retiree. She didn't need to use the pension. She'd been able to chuck enough away between the super and her investing outside super, so that 4 years before this happened, she was able to stop working, which meant that she could move from Queensland and come and help me with the kids. Like, the coolest mum ever, right? Anyway, so this is her the first time. So the benefit of that was she wasn't, while she was going through that cancer treatment, worrying about being able to feed herself. because the things that she had in super, the assets she had were able to cover her living costs. And that was the goal, like so that the dividends, interest, that kind of stuff was enough money. And if those terms don't mean anything to you, I'll have books for you to read later. But that was fantastic that she's able to do that. And then, unfortunately, the cancer came back in 2020, very sadly. But the fact that I had gotten to financial independence meant that I could close my business, which I did for 6 months to care for her while she went through that second round of treatment, and sadly also passed away. I know that's quite depressing. I'm not telling you this to depress you. What I'm telling you is we do not know how much time we have. Time is the only resource that we spend without knowing the balance. It is our most precious, non-renewable resource. And you exchange a lot of your time over your life to make money, so you have to make the most of it. And the fact that she was able to retire at 63, 2 years ahead of the pension age at that point, meant that she got to spend 7 amazing years with my family over here. If she hadn't done it, she would have still been in Queensland working. I'm not telling you this so that you go up and go like, oh, okay, I've got to start saving and buying shares tomorrow and I must do what Fran did. I'm trying to explain to you that it is possible for things to change, and things will change for you. You don't know how or when. When you're in it, it can feel like you're stuck, like you can't move. But there are people who do see changes of circumstances. They have luck swing their way. They've got enough knowledge behind them that they can take advantage of it. You can be preparing towards that if you want to. If you're not ready for it, park this in your brain, and in a decade or 5 years, whatever it might be that you finally feel you can think about, come back to that story. It might not be right for you right now, but I want you to know that Fran exists, it does happen, and it can happen. A lot has to go right for it to happen, so it might not happen for everybody, but it is something you can aim for. So with that in mind, we've got to acknowledge that when you're not working, there's a few things you're missing out on. Because often when I talk to people about going back to work for the first time, now this is more common with working mums who I've spent a lot of time around because I have children who are 9 and 12. And often the mums will say to me, kids are in school now. I'm going to go back to work, but there's no point, Lacey. I'm going to go financially backwards. I'm going to have to go to work, so I'm going to earn this amount of money, right? But then I'm going to have to pay tax, and then I'm going to have to pay childcare, and I'm going to lose this benefit. I'm actually going to go backwards financially. Why would I do that? Why would I add that level of stress? This is why, even in those couple of years where it feels like you're going backwards, these are the things you miss that are going to affect your ability to try and achieve some kind of financial stability. You're not just missing the pay. And this idea that the childcare pay comes out of the woman's wage is absolute BS. It comes out of both your wages. Your joint earning capacity is what matters if you've got a partnership. But the person who's not earning misses out on the super that's gathering momentum through compounding. They miss out on the ad hoc training and development that you get just by being in the workplace, and someone goes, hey, you want to learn how to use this computer program, or hey, you want to learn how to do this thing and run this conference, and all those skills you pick up. You miss out on the opportunity for promotions, and you miss out on the hidden jobs, word of mouth. You have no idea. I get calls twice a year. I haven't done consulting in about 6 years. I still get called for jobs. It doesn't say anything on LinkedIn. There are people out there with, please hire me on LinkedIn that can do my job, and people still call me because I'm known and I'm reliable. There's only one way to become known and reliable, and that's to do it, unfortunately. So if you've got those kinds of objections that are stopping you, I just want to put that out there to remind you. Now, there's plenty of you here who cannot, it's beyond the realm of possibility to go back to work right now. I get that. Park this in your brain for a couple of years' time when it's relevant. Okay? Then, of course, the great thing you can do, similar to what my mum did, is even if you don't think you can apply that knowledge right now, or it's looking too far in the future, you can start learning. There's some wonderful free resources out there. So here are some ones that I highly recommend. And you've got a sheet there that recommends more, but these are the ones I really wanted to draw your attention to. Money Smart is the government website. If you're ever wondering if something you've read is real or not, or if it's total BS, if it's not on Money Smart, it's probably BS, okay? That's the way to think about it. Money Smart is like this great point to start. Now, you've all got on your chairs this resource page. So don't worry about writing down the URLs. You're welcome to take a photo for a reminder, but on the back are all the URLs. Okay, so you can go and find these pages later if you want to. Feel free to take the photo, but I would feel sorry for you having to try and read that and then type in the URL later. So Money Smart's the first one. If it's not a Money Smart, I would treat it with a grain of salt. Okay? NDH, National Debt Helpline. Everyone thinks that's just about debt. And look, it's in the title. You can be forgiven for thinking it's just about debt. But there's a lot more than just debt on there. They've got great fact sheets, they've got great directions, and that is also where you can find a financial counsellor. Now, we have helped you with that. We've got 2 of them in the room here from Anglicare. But if you wanted to try and find someone, if you're from another area, I know we've got at least one person from Margaret River here, then you might want to try and find someone closer to home. You can go onto ndh.org.au, go to the Find a Financial Counsellor, search for your postcode, and it'll give you the list, and then you can book in that way. Great resource on that side. The Smith family has this fantastic program called Saver Plus, where if you go through the program, if you're at that point where you can start to save, they have matched saving. If you say $500, they'll give you $500. It's got to be spent on educational stuff for your kids, but it's a really cool program, and it has some education along with it. So even if you're not ready to save, you might want to still look at that program because it's a really good resource. And Smith Family is fantastic. Now, these last 2, I'm going to just give a trigger warning because I know there were some people who had relationship issues. Financial abuse will happen to 1 in 6 women and 1 in 14 men in Australia. It's not just women, men happen to it too. It's just more common that it happens to women. If you or someone you know, you suspect they're experiencing any form of financial abuse or economic abuse, which would be things like they don't have access to their own bank account, their partner won't let them have a bank card, their partner insists on having all of their login details, they won't let them work or they restrict their access to money, those kinds of things, these 2 websites are for you. Yourtoolkit.com has a list of all the things you need to think about in step-by-step fashion to help you work through that, so you don't have to rely on your brain for that. And 1-800-RESPECT can help you with all sorts of resources for that situation. So if anyone has that experience or knows someone has that experience, these 2 websites are for you. Okay? You can also go to your local library, and your local library has this really cool thing online these days. You know, back in the days, if I wanted to read a newspaper at the library, I had to go to the library, you know, like I had to actually sit there and read through it. They now have mostly all these subscriptions to Press Reader, which will let you get behind the paywalls. So if you want to read something in, you know, like the Australian Financial Review, which is paid, and you're like, well, that sounds really interesting, you can get it for free via your library on your phone. You can also get all the books on BorrowBox on your phone, or you can actually physically go to the library. I've been into the Australian Library because I used to live behind the Coles there, and they've got a great rack of books on money stuff. Like, it's like this long. I was a bit offended that my book wasn't like on the local authors thing. I did come in and go, I live 700 metres away. But that's okay. I'll get over it. There's lots of things you can do to get started learning. You might not be ready to apply that knowledge for a long time. You might be like my mum, it might take like 10 years. But if you start learning now, then you'll know what you've got there ready waiting for you. And then finally, the big thing is, of course, speaking to people who can help you. Now, our friends and family are very well-meaning. But my dad will give you financial advice if you ask him. Should you take my father's financial advice? No. He still tries to give me financial advice. Just to give you some context of that, all that tax dodging did not work. He got bankrupted by the ATO. He now lives in Department of Housing. He has no assets except his car, no savings, no super. Right? He's in community housing for the rest of his life. I will not take him in. I love him, but he will get no access to my money. That man still tries to tell me what to do with money. It's very funny. I just smile and nod at him. I love you, Dad. But I'm not taking his financial advice. You're going to hear people give you advice. They'll all have an opinion on what to do. You need to put it through some pretty serious radars about why they're giving you that advice. Often when I hear the share markets are gambling, it's because someone has bet on some terrible stock and they lost everything. And the problem wasn't the share market, it was the stock they chose. Or someone will go, I'll never have a mortgage again. You know, those banks are crooks. I'm not going to disagree with you, but there are ways to do it well, okay? Often there's a component of, it wasn't a great choice, but there was also maybe you didn't understand it. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt, and you've got to understand who is qualified to give you advice. I am not qualified to give you advice. I am neither a financial counsellor nor a financial advisor. They're the two qualifications in Australia for getting individual advice. Financial advisors tend to cost money. They're the people you talk to when you're like, I've got some money to invest, or I need to work out where to, should I buy shares, should I buy property, how much should I be putting into super? That's what a financial advisor is for. It's usually for when you're feeling quite financially stable. A financial counsellor is for everything else, okay? If you're having issues making ends meet, if you're worried about a debt, if you're stressing about your housing costs, any of those kinds of things, financial counsellors are the unsung heroes of our financial ecosystem. They don't get anywhere near enough airplay, in my opinion. The best thing about them is they cannot charge you a cent and they can't sell you anything. Now, that is in the law for them. Whereas a financial advisor can be offering to, I'll help you invest that super and take my 2% commission a year. You don't get that with financial counsellors. They will always have your interests first and foremost. They're there to help you. They're there to help you advocate for yourself, or sometimes to advocate on your behalf. They can help you understand what your options are. And you have the chance to talk to them today. And if you don't do it today, you can book in later. I just figure you may as well try and do it today while they're here, right? So this question is about superannuation. And at some point with your super, you might choose to make extra contributions. So there's the compulsory contributions that your employer has to make. You need to check that those have been paid and that they've been paid their own amount. You do need to check that. If there's been a mistake, you need to bring it up. But you might have some extra money, like this lady has, and has said, I'll pop that into super. Now, the reason why that's really appealing to do is because when we pay income tax, when you put money into superannuation, you only pay 15% tax. So you're only saving 1% on those lower tax brackets. But if you're paying a really high amount of tax, then putting it into super is really attractive. That's why so many people, bluntly, take advantage of the system. But in order for the superannuation fund to know how much tax to take out, you have to tell them through that form that you've been told, which is usually a notice of voluntary super contributions or concessional tax rates. There'll be something like that on the top of the form. If you don't tell them, then they'll take it out at a different tax rate. So you have to send that form back in and you need to do it next week. It's got to be back in. This week would be better. It's got to be, I think they've got to have the paperwork. They have to physically have the paperwork by the 26th of June or something like that. You can double check me, but the sooner the better. Like, you could probably leave here and go get that form and fill it in and post it, and I'd feel better. Yeah.
I just don't know how much I'm allowed, like I said.
Did you bring the form with you today? Okay, well, that's okay. We'll be able to find someone who can help you work out how much to put in. But you actually don't need to calculate normally, like how much of it, if it's the forms I've seen before. You just need to tell them that it's a voluntary contribution that you want at a concessional rate. Now, what that means is each year you can put in X amount into super. At the moment, you can put $30,000 a year in and pay that 15% tax rate. Once you go over $30,000 a year for that year, the theory is that you pay more tax. Now, if you haven't put a lot into super for the last 5 years, you'll also have some unused concessions from the previous years. Like, for example, I could put $100,000 into super this year and still pay the 15% tax because I haven't paid myself much super, right? So it depends on your situation. But that's why it's attractive. So there's a $30,000 cap and then there's a lifetime cap of $500,000 at the moment. So long as you're under that $500,000, so long as you're under the $30,000 and or with your extra bits from previous years, you can claim that 15% tax rate, which is why people choose to do it. If you don't put the form in, they'll be like, oh, it's a higher tax rate because it's an after-tax contribution. They assume it's an after-tax contribution if you don't tell them. So that's why you have to do it. But the government will see, oh, they paid this much into super and they'll work it out. So even if you get the wrong number, they'll work that out, okay? The super funds have to report and say, here's how much super this person put in, therefore they've used up this much of their totals. If you've got a MyGov login, you can go in and have a look at how much super you've put in theoretically. They don't report regularly, so you have to look at when the number was. It'll be up to date in about 3 months. So unfortunately, although MyGov has got really good for finding out how much extra you could put in, you have to go to your super provider and see how many contributions you put in this year if you're not sure if you're going to hit that $30,000 or that $500,000 limit yet. So you have to go to log into your super. But if you haven't put $30,000 in yet, including the compulsory contributions that your employer made, the ones they had to do for you, then you should be okay, unless you hit that $500,000 cap. But they will work out how much tax is owed at the super end. You don't get a bill later, they do it all at the super end, is my experience anyway. But yeah, so don't stress too much about getting that wrong. It's not, do you know that's a thing in America? In America, they do this thing like, guess how much tax you owe us. That's what you have to do. They don't do any of like our nice, easy stuff. And then if you get it wrong, they slap you. Whereas here, if you get it wrong, they go, actually, oh no, we've adjusted it. Here's what you should have been paying. Okay. The other thing for people to realise with super, if you haven't looked at it as well, is if you are on what's considered a low income, which I think this year was something like $40,600, something like that. You'll have to go and look at the website. I've put the link, I think, on there. That you can make an after-tax contribution to your super, so it's money that you might have somewhere else. You won't get the tax discount, but you don't care anyway if you're not earning a lot of money. The government will match that up to $500. At the moment, you have to make sure you qualify. Please read the details and make sure you qualify, but you could, if you had extra money and you wanted to get some of the government's money for free, consider doing that. Okay? Oh, it's an incredibly frustrating story. So I don't know if everyone heard that, but this problem with our balance with super funds charge a fee. It sounds small, you know. Some of the funds have a very small fee. Like you can get a 0.02% fee fund. Yeah, and as that depletes, of course, it's not improving your balance in the long run. So I'm very sad to hear that that's happened to you. You could definitely like make a complaint about that experience just to have it on record. Well, sometimes there's a catharsis in actually making a complaint to close it out for you. Sometimes that can be very satisfying. And if you have a complaint about any financial stuff, you can complain to the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA, that is also on your handout. Sometimes, if you kick up enough of the stink, they try and make it up to you. That's why I like to complain whenever I'm unhappy. But I couldn't guarantee it. For everyone else, the point with that is if you are using a super fund, they are taking fees out of your account every year, and every time they take the fees out, it reduces your balance and you get less of that great compounding that's happening. So it's in your interest to know, in your interest, the financial person, boom, chin, excuse the pun. It is in your interest to know what your fees are. You need to check your fees and try to pay the minimum fees that you can. But one other question at the back, and then I'll come to you, is that all right? To check your fees, you can head on to MyGov, head to the ATO. Head to My Super, and they have this Your Super comparison tool. Now, it's only a cherry-picked amount. They've only got like 59 or something different funds in there, whereas there are about 15,000 products you can invest in across 350 different superannuation funds. So it's not like comprehensive, but it knows which fund you're invested in. It knows how much you pay in fees, total fees, not like the admin fee, and then the direct investment fee, and then the indirect investment fee, which are the three things you have to add up to find out what your actual fees are. It tells you in dollars, and then it tells you if you were in this fund instead, here's how much you would have paid. So you can see if you're getting a good deal or not. And you don't have to go put your email address into that stupid compare the market type of thing. You're doing it on MyGov, it's got all the information it needs already. It will tell you to give you a bit of an idea about whether you're paying too high fees for what you've got or not. Because it will do it based on your balance and your age. Really cool tool. Okay, now, yes?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you.
Where to go to find it? Yeah, so MyGov. Then you go to the ATO, because we have to log in via MyGov to get to the ATO. And then under Super, because usually at the top you've got tax, then Super. Under that Super menu, you will find the Your Super comparison tool. But if you Google Your Super all as one word, just make sure it's the government version, because some cheeky commercial person has created a non-government version using the same name. And once they get your email address or phone number, they're calling you every 5 minutes. So do use the government one. And when you go in there, it will say, here's how much you paid in fees, and here's how much the performance was of your fund. And then compare it against, and you can pick up to 4 different alternatives. And I'll give you a list. And as I said, it's a short list. It's not a comprehensive list of every super fund option you've got, but it's enough for you to get a feel for whether it's good fees or maybe a bit high. And they will do it in dollars, not in percentages, because I don't know about you, but sometimes it's very hard to compare the percentages, because as you said, when you have a low balance, that can get chewed up by those admin fees. So having the absolute dollars is really useful. Alright, so the question is, if you've got a sustained lower income and you have a mortgage, but you want to pay your mortgage off as quickly as possible, what are some tips for that? And so often when we get a mortgage, has anyone in the room never had a mortgage before? There's a few people. So when you get a mortgage, you'll pick a number with the bank for how long that duration is going to be. It might be 15 years, 25 years, 30 years. They now have 35-year mortgages, right? Like, you pick this duration. And once you pick that duration and you set your interest rate, that decides how much you pay off each month. That's the calculation. They go, oh, well, you're going to have the money for this long, and we're going to offer you this rate. And it says, okay, well, this month you owe me $500, right? You know, whatever. It's never $500, is it? That's a dream. It's back from the 1960s. But anyway, you know what I mean. You're going to pay this amount. Yeah, you're going to pay this amount. Exactly. Yeah, it probably is $500 a week or $1,000 a week for some people. Oh, mortgages, such fun. So you've really only got two options to reduce your mortgage, right? Number one is, I want a lower rate. I call my bank, and I do this once a year. I get on the phone, and I'm like, hi, my name's Lacey. I'm a wonderful customer, and you love me. I'd like a reduction in my interest rate, please. And they go, oh, we'll have to check with management. I go, that'd be great. And usually they'll go like, so how much do you want? And I'll go, well, look, I had a look online. And see these people over here? They're getting like 0.5% less than me. I'm not very happy about that, and I'm considering leaving your bank. I do have a bit of a like, you know, I'm not rude, but I'm like, could you please match this? I've never got less than 0.25% off. One of my friends got 1.09% off. Okay? That's something you can do in 8 minutes on your drive home today. Call the bank. Hi, I would like a reduction in my interest rate, please. And I can give you a script if you'd like one. But I like to say, because that interest rate reduction adds up to the life of your loan, it's the quickest way to make 20 grand with your clothes on. Mate, like, it's honestly, it's really good. Like, it's worth doing. Now that's a great question. Fixed interest rate. Now, when we fix that interest rate, the bank goes, awesome. I can bank on this money. Oh, the puns. I'm so good at the puns. I've spent too much time in this job. Yes, the fixed interest rate is in the interest of the bank because they know exactly how much money they're getting. And so to change a fixed interest rate can mean breaking a contract. You would only do it if the cost of breaking the contract was lower than the money you were going to save. So that's a maths question. You do have to look at that. So often you have to wait till the fixed interest rate has expired. Now, the fixed interest rate is really attractive because it gives you security. You're not always wondering about interest rates going up, right? Which now people are. We weren't for about 10 years. Interest rates were going down, 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 and now they're going up, up, up. I mean, they're coming back down again now. But given your situation, I would definitely encourage talking to a financial counsellor about whether you can talk to their team about what it might be. Can you get a better rate? Can you reduce that? Because the bank has discretion. They are interested in you being able to keep that loan and pay them off. That's how they make their money. So, has anyone thought about how banks make money before? Right, so you don't have to go, please put money in our bank, please save with us and we'll give you interest. Every dollar that you put in allows them to loan 3 imaginary dollars to someone else and then they pay a much higher interest rate. That's the business model, right? So that's why they want your savings and then they can loan to you. This is in their interest to have you keep going. So if you're having any problems that might put you, for example, into financial hardship and whether that would be possible to look at, there are avenues through that. Now, they can include things like extending periods of time, switching to interest only instead of principal and interest. There can be all sorts of different approaches, but I don't know what's going to work for you. I would definitely suggest talking to a financial counsellor to go through that. The other option, of course, is to try and make more money through renting out rooms. I don't know how much everyone likes sharing houses, but that's a very popular option. Well, you like a bunk, mate? I assume that's your son. But look, the interest rate one, if you're on a fixed interest, unfortunately you have to wait till that lapses usually, unless you can negotiate with the bank. And you'd only ever usually choose to break it in that circumstance if you're going to save money. And the bank's like, no, we've counted on getting that money. So that's why you would want to come at it from a financial hardship angle. This is now creating a problem for me. I'd like you to take me off the fixed rate and put me on this lower variable rate and not charge me for that. And you may or may not have success. But a financial counsellor is definitely the person for you to talk to work through that, what options are for them. Sorry that I don't have a very good answer for you. Everyone else is on a variable rate. Well, you should be calling your banks on the way home and asking for a reduction in the interest rate. Okay, so the question is, can you take super out early? The answer is yes, but it's hard. Okay, so there are a few criteria that allow you to take out money early in general. So one is you got a terminal diagnosis and 2 doctors have said you're going to die within 6 or 12 months. That's a really bad option. Don't go do that. You can avoid it. There are occasions where there's health things. So, for example, there's been some cases with mental health or with dental and stuff where it's determined to be seriously life-affecting and that they may let you take money out for funding specific activities, like plenty of people, you might have seen all the absolute rorting, bluntly, that has happened with people trying to get root canal works or that kind of stuff done, and they've taken money out of super to do it. So you want to get some very clear advice. Well, you could have, but we've just seen some awful sob stories about dentists who took everyone's money and then they ended up with no teeth, right? Like it's not a guarantee. But that is an option. There's a financial hardship option. So does anyone remember during COVID they said, you can take 10 grand on your super this year, 10 grand next year. The same process that we currently have, the financial hardship, they just made it easier. You just had to be like, oh yes, I am in financial hardship, and they all went, okay, we believe you. Now, if we go back to that process, you now have to prove that you are in financial hardship to be able to access any of it. So you've got to go through the hoops to get to it. So those are a few things that allow you to get it out. There's one other one, which is the First Home Super Saver Scheme. So if you make contributions over a period of time, you get this great tax rate, and then you take 50 grand out for your deposit. There's a lot of rules and stuff about it. You've got to read the detail, but it is an option for saving for a home. They're the ones that spring to mind. So there are a few, but in general, if it's in super, treat it as if it's gone, because getting it out is harder until you reach what's called the preservation age, which I think for most people is going to be 60 in this room. You won't be able to get to it easily until 60. So for me, when I was a young person, I was like, bugger that, I want access to it now. So I kept the money out of super and invested it outside of super. But I know I had enough extra money to save and invest. If you knew that the money was going to burn a hole in your pocket, you might want to put it in super anyway, just to resist the temptation and work against your brain. And certainly the closer you get to retirement, the more attractive it is. Because there are lots of things like there's a transition to retirement planning that happens when you get to your late, second half of your 50s, where you can use payments into super and then take them out as a pension to pay yourself and pay a lower rate. Don't worry too much about the detail. You need to talk to an advisor or your super fund about it. But there are certainly advantages. But when you're young, because you know that money's locked up, if you've got something else you know you want to do with that money, like save for a house or a car, you have to be very careful about putting it into super instead. Okay, now so the question is, best interest rates for savings accounts? You have to look every time. I can't give you this bank's awesome. All right? You have to regularly, unfortunately you have to do it, you have to regularly look for the best one. Okay? And you do have to Google and look for their best customer lines. What I want you to do is be willing to change banks if you find a better rate elsewhere. Now, lots of people stay back. Who had a Dolomite account? Me too, 1987. Thank you very much, Mum, for signing me up for that. It's like tattooing a child, giving them a bank account and them seeing all that branding, right? The banks are relying on us thinking it's really hard work to change banks. They really are. They're relying on you going, oh my God, such a pain in the back because I have to go and put in my ID and then they've got to do all this verification. And they have these processes they have to follow to make sure that you're not a terrorist, basically, or laundering money. They have to do this know your customer process. It's legislatively required. It is super easy to change banks now. And I say this from absolute personal experience. This month, I went and had a look at all my banking and my super and my shares and discovered that all of them were with fossil fuels. And I'm having a massive eco-conscious moment, and I went, this sucks. So just to give you the scope on this, I have 20 bank accounts with it. I have my business banking, my children's banking, 3 lots of share trading, there's a lot in there. I'm going through the process of changing them all over. I can tell you it is heaps easier than it was before. I had I changed my super in 3 minutes. 3 minutes? After I decided which super fund I wanted. That was the hard bit. And after I decided which bank I wanted, it took a few minutes. It is so quick these days to change over. So what you want to be careful of is which comparison sites you use. Some of them are what we call pay-to-play. They only show people, or banks, or credit unions, lenders, that have paid to be listed on the site. So, why? Oh yes, lights. Oh, we're all awake now. So they will only have those people who've signed up and paid a fee to that site. Okay, so you're not getting the full range. And if I had the best interest rate in town, I might not need to pay to be on that site. So there's some common ones. Finder is one that is pay to play. So you're not getting the full range. So you do need to do some searching, but try and do it. Like put a calendar reminder in and have a look every 3 months. And if you go change bank every 3 months, then do it. But once the bank has got you, they spend a lot of money to get you. The cost of acquiring you was significant for them. They don't want to lose you. So if you find a competitor who's got a better rate, I'd be calling the bank. You're like, I'm not very happy with this rate. I could go over here. It's only going to take me 5 minutes to change. Would you like to keep me? Remembering that the money you put in their savings account decides how much they can lend to others, which decides how much profit they make. They want to keep you. So whether you actually move or not, I would call the bank first and see if they'll match it, and if they won't and it's worth it, I'd jump over. But when you're looking, you have to be careful of a few things. So often they'll have, you must make 5 transactions, or you can't go backwards in your balance, or it's the interest rate only applies to $5,000 balances and under. You know, you have to look at the terms and conditions before you change. So it does take a bit of research, but the changing process is quick these days. So I haven't given you an answer. I can tell you that if you want to go to marketforces.org.au, you'll find that all 5 of our majors invest in fossil fuels, and for eco reasons, I feel like I should tell you not to do that. But you can choose. It's, if you don't, if you're not a, I hate fossil fuels person, then carry on. But I personally will not be touching them until they change their policies. When you're walking around, if you see the banks, they'll always have those comparison rates. Take a photo. That can be enough as well. Call them up, can you match it? If not, sorry, I'm gone. Thank you very much for your time and for your questions. I appreciate it.